Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Batter's Box podcast. I'm your host, Nick Kemper. Today I have co-host
Terry Phillips.
Big time. We are changing up the format of this episode. So instead of having a guest on, Terry and I are going to basically talk about a concept that we think is important to us and the field today, with the concept today being periodization and then how to structure a workout and a system.
So, Nick, before we start off, why don't you actually, for the audience, define what periodization is?
So basically, periodization is the point in time or point within the given year that your training block is within. So basically, throughout the year, you'll have different phases. One of them being, the off season, one of them being the in season, one of them being preseason, and then one of them being kind of like a dead period where you kind of detrain for about 2 weeks, usually. So the kind of the periodization model is the off season is generally something where you're going to have like a higher volume focus. So something where it'll be GPP, which stands for general preparatory or general physical preparation. Yeah. And that's going to be like your higher volume work, your kind of tissue prep, getting guys more acclimated in the weight room from a dead period per se. And then from there, you'll transition, depending on how long that is, you'll transition into a more strength-based focus, and then a power-based, speed power, and so on. That's kind of like a rough outline of what periodization is. Terry, I guess, what do you think is kind of like the biggest blockade that people go into? Because we've all seen the guy that comes in the gym and like feels pressured and just starts doing like an insane amount of volume because he thinks that's what's going to get him better like the fastest.
Yeah, I think it's just having no plan is the biggest blocker. It's finding what your buddies are doing, whatever is on TikTok or Instagram, and then just like kind of go in the weight room with like no structure. And like, don't get me wrong, like a lot of people, especially at the younger levels, can still make gains without like a plan. Like if you're just going to the weight room and you're just working hard, like you'll get better. But is that what's best? Like absolutely not. I think what athletes need to be aware of, and coaches and trainers and whomever, is this like there's just a lot of variability in what's going on in an athlete's life. As you identify between like early off season, late off season, in season. So getting, working with someone to identify like, okay, this is what you need to do during this time phase. This is what you need to do during this time phase is going to be key to being like, okay, I'm making improvements versus like, okay, I'm now doing like what's best for my performance and my health.
Regarding like the performance and health, period blocks and phases of your training can be super variable. So somebody who's like a younger kid, underdeveloped, not necessarily like super coordinated, like they could go on 12, 16 week kind of like GPP block or hypertrophy block and still see gains in the strength department, still see gains in the power, and even speed too, because at the end of the day, like them putting on tissue for the first time in their life or putting on like muscular tissue is going to be beneficial. Now, with that being said, it doesn't last forever. So I remember when I was younger and first starting out, it was like the more I went to the gym, the more stronger I got and the better I got, just like not just in the gym, but on the field too. And I associated that with like, we're just going to do volume for the rest of our life because we're going to get massive and we're going to get faster and stronger like in the process of doing it. And I remember I hit a wall and I was talking with Chris Regas back in South Dakota about this. And he had like the same thing. And I remember when I hit my wall, it was like I kept on getting just like massive. Like I was just like so tight and so strong, but I could not move to save my life. And I was getting slower. And I remember like asking him like, why am I getting slower when I'm getting stronger? And then basically he had to explain to me like, it's because you need to stop doing, sets of 8, sets of 12, 10 sets of 5, and just like a massive amount of volume, and then transition more into, at that point, probably just straight to power, just because like I was so big and strong already, and then like I needed to move quicker. I think athletes forget, especially nowadays and like the younger ones, that strength is separate from the field. Meaning you get stronger, that doesn't necessarily mean you get better on the field. And I think a lot of guys, myself included when I was younger, attributed getting stronger and just doing more work in the weight room to the field performance is going to take care of itself, and that's not always the case. What is kind of the, like, I don't want to say limiting factor, but like what is the point in time where you kind of almost like take a step back from the weight room and focus more on the field stuff?
If we're looking at from a calendar year perspective, and fall ball is its own variable that throws wrenches into plans, and then if we're talking now, then especially softball, December tournaments and then January travel tournaments, and like there's actually no like real off season. But if we're looking at like the calendar year, and again, let's take an athlete where fall ball is not happening. I think September, October, late August. I think I still think that, like, season's over. Take some weeks to just like chill out, go on vacation, do whatever. But like late August, September, October, that's a time where it's like you're just hammering weight room. That's usually typical. And I say more from like a frequency perspective too, as far as like getting in like four days a week. But I think, recognizing that, like, especially baseball is just baseball and softball is so skill dependent. And you need a lot of reps. And I would argue, I'm probably off by this because I'm not actually thinking about it for very long, but I'd argue that like probably no other sport has such a high cost of working on the skill than baseball and softball does. If we're looking from like a throwing perspective,
I could see golf probably.
Golf probably a good amount too. I think golf would be, but yeah, I think like golf would be similar to hitting though.
Yes.
I'd argue like you probably get more swings on the golf course. The golf field is about to say on the golf field. But like if you're looking at like to develop the skill of throwing, you have to throw. Like I despite what like a lot of medical providers out there say, like you can get better at throwing by not throwing. Like really. To an extent, sure, but you need to throw. But like those throws come with a cost. Like this is not a very accurate term, but you can try to assume like you're more likely to get hurt by throwing more regularly than by like not throwing at all. Obviously, there's a ton of variability and a ton of nuance, and that's not actually 100% true. But like if you don't throw, you're not going to hurt your arm. In the moment in time.
Get better,
but also, you're also not going to get better. So it's like this weird paradoxical thing. Right. But then like with hitting, like you need tons of reps. But again, that comes at a cost at like your back, your hips, knees, your wrist. So I think people just like neglect the cost of those things and recognize that your body needs to be fresh to do that skill, both from like, again, health perspective, but also from a performance and motor learning perspective. If you're just absolutely gassed when you're going and getting your 150 swings because you've been crushing a push-pull legs times 2, the quality of like that skill work, which we're talking about like fine motor control, is gonna be like very, very diminished. And like that skill work is just gonna become like junk volume, junk volume on the skill side. But then also too, like your tissues are already stressed and already fatigued. So then you go and do like things that again have that cost, and now like that cost is amplified. So I kind of use like a bastardized analogy of like, okay, if you're coming in with like the cost of 100 swings for your body is, 20% drain on your internal like gas tank, we'll say. If your body's fresh and you're kind of hanging out, going to a training session at 80%, we'll say, because you're feeling good, then that 20% drain is fine. You recover from that, you go back up relatively easy. If you're going into that 100 swing session and your gas tank at 50% because you've just been overdoing it, then that 20% drain takes a lot further, and that's when you kind of get to that closer to redlining each individual session. You repeat that over time, and then that's when like your issues come into play.
Getting worse, yeah.
Yeah, so I think athletes just really, really neglect that, and then again, they think they can just like, German volume train their skill
Small
work,
squat training.
And then not recognizing that when they why they're not getting better as the season goes on, and it's both the skill side is just going to suffer, but then also too just like you're not going to be making strength gains probably at some point, just because you've drained the
so
well
tired.
dry. So I think like once you get to the point where like, okay, I got to really start being ready for the season and recognizing that's probably going to be, I'm not saying it's be like game ready by December, but like recognize you got to start probably turn that dial up a bit to get more skill work in. But that's during that time, you only have so much energy to allocate. You have to turn something down. You can try to turn life stress down, but like dropping out of school probably not an option.
Parents are not gonna like it.
If you're working, quitting your job likely not an option. So recognizing that's constant. What you're probably going to have to turn down is going to be your weight training work, and that's usually I recommend. Like, okay, we're going to go from doing 4 days a week. Like this is typically what I just go with, like 4 days a week, upper lower split in the early off season. But now we're going to go like 3 days of maybe full upper lower, or maybe just full. But just like recognizing, okay, that doing that will allow us to be a little more fresh. We're still going to be pushing a needle on the strength side. This isn't like we're punting on strength development.
Yeah.
This isn't maintenance,
Right.
because we're not going 4 or 5 days a week. Like you're still working hard. You're still getting a lot out of it. But this is just going to allow us to have more like energy allocated to the skill work that needs to happen.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned the 4 days, because I think a lot of people get the misconception that you need to be in the gym every single day. And 6 days a week, especially, I mean, you can make an argument that like when you're a beginner, maybe, but then again, you could also make the same argument that if you're a beginner, more than likely you're going to be young, you're still going to be growing, your body's going to need that energy to basically divert it to actual like growing processes. Not the least of which is like all the taxation that you're doing on your like neuromuscular system. Like you're going to need that energy to grow, and therefore like going to the gym 5-6 days a week is pretty much overkill. And you're going to see a lot of guys that will think that is the answer just because they think more is always better. But in reality, they lose the recovery aspect of that. And I remember, going through when I was in high school, like my off seasons, I would not take that dead period, which probably like looking back, I don't know if that was good or bad, but like I just like wanted to be in the gym more, so I didn't need like a mental reset. Physically, maybe, but either way, I like my off season was starting like August when our season was done, and going through it was like everything was gonna be slow. It was going to be basically like restoring range of motion in my joints, like getting the tissues acclimated to like stress again. And then like putting size on, because like that was a big thing. I wanted to get to like 220 pounds at one point. That was like my goal weight. And in doing that, it became, okay, the beginning part of the off season is going to be, something super slow. There's a ton of eccentric work in there. There's a ton of isometric work in there, which for people out there, eccentric is the lowering portion of the muscle, the lengthening portion of the muscle. Oftentimes it's the lowering phase of a lift. And then isometric means basically the joint is remaining stable, so it's not moving at all. There's a ton of movements in there where I would basically just be like super slow and controlled. And then from there, after I think it was 8 to 12 weeks, I became I got more into like a strength phase. I started implementing plyometrics into that. Not something like terribly like intensive, more so just like deep tier stuff. And then from there, as I got further into my off season, the volume kept on decreasing, the intensity kept on increasing in the sense of more violent, explosive movements. Not necessarily something that was going to like put me in harm's way by any means, because my tissues were already prepped for that. But when it comes to like very quick bursts of intensity and then like a long rest. And that's another thing too that athletes, especially young ones, like lose sight on, is the rest period is super important. Because if you're not going to rest, like that ATP storage that you have, it's not going to be restored for that next rep. And therefore, like you said, you're basically just redlining and digging yourself a hole further and further, and then we're not getting better at the end of the day because we're training at submaximal intent is what it turns out to be. And then as you kind of get into like the preseason stage, which is always super awkward in my mind because guys always have different practice schedules, especially pitchers. Like pitchers are maybe throwing a few times a week, max intent bullpen one time, and then like they feel like they have a ton of time. But for position guys who are going to be more so on the skill side, hitting, throwing, fielding ground balls, taking fly balls, whatever, those guys are going to be have a higher workload on the field, and as a result, like their threshold capacity is variable based on the guy. So like some guys, and we talked about this with Chris Martin. Some guys like to do like a microdosing strategy, and it's like 4 or 5 days a week, but like those 4 or 5 days are like max 15, 20 minutes. Like you're getting one stimulus in for the day and you're getting out. Other guys just like to get 2 days because they think like, get them in 2 days out of the week. That's the least amount of time I have to be in the weight room. Great. Like we'll go and do that. Other guys like, it feels differently on their body. For instance, the catcher who goes and catches 8 bullpens the previous day, he's probably not going to want to go in and crush legs that day. So like that's when you're going to go do like an upper body microdosing strategy, and then probably the day after that you hit him with the lower body, and then kind of see how he's feeling from there. But it's always variable, right? Like the strength coach who goes in the beginning of the off season, and I was this guy at one point who like plans everything, like, all right, this is going to be great, and then 2 weeks later it's like, this is a shit show. Like you have to scrap everything. Almost like don't plan. And I think Joe Padula said something about this too. Like he just doesn't even plan anymore because he knows it's going to just like have to be changed. And I think that's super valuable too. Is like the importance of being adaptable and being somebody that regardless of what happens that day, like they're prepared because of the work they put in before.
Yeah, I think you nailed down the head of just like you're not going to catch up in a short period of time. You've either done the work for like you stacked on weeks, months, not even weeks, you've stacked on months, years, and that's like where your preparation, your body's gonna be able to like tolerate it. I think people like, December rolls around like, oh shit, I should get in the weight room now, and it's like, well, oh shit, good luck staying healthy this year.
What do you mean the season's too only 2 months away?
Yeah, and then with that, just not recognizing like to truly make strength gains, like how long that takes.
Yeah.
Because I think we just get. I mean, like, I still, even like myself, when I'm like lifting right now, when I get in a new block of phase, it's like, oh yeah, the weight's going up real soon. It's like I'm definitely just getting so much stronger. But no, it's just like I'm getting reacclimated to the skill. I'm just like getting more like fine tuned with like my my coordination of it. So I'm just making like neurological gains, and then it's like. And then after the first 2-3 weeks, things level out, and then the real gains start happening after that, which is like painfully slow.
Grinding.
And I just think people then are just like, well, I need to now switch my program up, and it's just like, yeah, you just stay stuck in, mediocrity, purgatory.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's just like recognizing it, like it just takes a long time. You can't, I did say like. Take some time off at the end of the season, like get yourself a body refresh, but a week or two.
Yeah.
And don't wait and don't like keep on putting it off.
Train for 2 months.
Yeah, and then be like, okay, now it's time to get after it, because then you're just like catching back up for like most of the off season, and then the amount of actual gains that you make is minimal, and then you're just not going to be prepped for the season.
Yeah, Clayton Thompson, he's with the Dodgers now. He was the first one to basically broach the question to me of, okay, are you getting stronger or are you getting better at the movement? And I remember thinking, like, oh, shit. Like, that's probably pretty accurate in the sense of you get better at the movement, especially when you're young and you don't have a whole wealth of experience at your tail to basically bank on. And every single training session just becomes like you get better and better at the specific lift, which is part of the reason why training blocks become 6, 7, 8 weeks, because in order to, yes, you have to master that lift and get better at the movement, but like that's also how you get stronger too, because you need to train that muscle pattern. And I think a lot of kids, which I thought was so crazy, because I remember when I was a kid, I always wanted to do like the same thing, and every kid comes in like, oh, we're doing the same thing as last week. It's like, this is the second week that you guys have been doing this.
We're not doing muscle confusion.
Yeah, right. We're not. Was that Arnold that would said that? Yeah. But that was something that I think more kids need to. And I think it's like a generation thing too, like with the patience thing, because a lot of kids now like just don't have the patience, and they want kind of like what you talked about, like I'll get better in 3 weeks, like no problem whatsoever, and they need to take their time more, and not the least of which is like give yourself some margin for error if anything does happen. Yeah. But the kids coming in and basically wanting stuff to be changed every single week or even day is not suitable. Like, I mean, one, for us, like we don't have the time for that, but then two, like for the kids, to actually get better and develop at the actual movement that they're doing. Not, viable for like the current landscape, especially when these kids are, 5'11", 135 pounds. Like, you need to do the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I know you're not doing this, but I don't want to like put it like on the kids, because like it's a FOMO society.
Yeah.
Of
sure.
like
social media.
Of just like predominantly driven by social media, the internet, of like, okay, this one weird trick made me gain 5 miles an hour. So then like you just get kids who are just constantly seeking out the one weird trick and then never gain the 5 miles an hour. Same thing like weightlifting. It's just like I saw whomever like was on this program, and they're, they say their squat went up 100 pounds in whatever amount of weeks, and it's just they just constantly are bombarded with that. And they're also call it what it is, but they're like in this like system of like travel ball of like winning now is the most important thing. They've been hammered it by their coaches for such a long period of time, and like such a value on like the short-term results of like winning the 12U tournament and squaring down a bunt to get to remove the runner over.
Let's say World Series.
When you're at 8U and just like doing delayed steals at 9U because you have to win. It's just like, so they're just ingrained of like, I have to like win now. What's going to get me there? And so they're just going to jump from program to program and expect that they need like all these like flashy things, but it's like, it's just consistency that you need to do. There was I can't actually remember his first name. I want to say it's Kirk's pitching performance I was seeing today, but cool account. Smart guy. He was just like laying out the same thing with like saying like, okay, he goes, I blew through like $15,000 on shortcuts this last year. This is what I learned. They don't work. And like the only thing that works is just your habits that you create, and then just being like just terribly consistent.
Yes.
And just repeating that over and over and over again. And it's one of those things. It's like, unfortunately, like most kids, athletes, whatever, they're not gonna figure it out until like they almost, it's like it's too late. It's because like you're not gonna go into the mundane if you think what's working for you is continue to work for you. And usually you find out it's not working for you once you've been left, when it's like very apparent. And you just get left behind. And I see that on the injury side like all the time. It's like, oh well, like no, this is working for me, I'm feeling good. It's like your elbow feels good until you hear some noises come out of it, and then all of a sudden like what was working for you is no longer working for you. So it's like very similar like on the performance side. It's like, yeah, you're thinking this is what you need, and you're not going to go to like the mundane until like it's probably too late, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I look at the calendar now for kids, and you talked about this earlier. Full slate of summer ball, go into fall ball and play 40 more games. Have the winter tournaments, the MLK in January or whatever. And then go into high school ball / spring ball if you're not old enough to play high school. And it's like, when you get better, because there's no time for you to actually push the needle there. Like there's no time for you to go be able to, one, have the resource in your body to actually push it and get super sore the next day, or two, be able to get super sore the next day because you have to go fly to the banana ball 13U ball buster tournament. That's
my favorite tournament.
Gonna cost $4,000 for your parents. Like, there's no long-term development. We get guys at their senior high school that kind of look back and they're like, holy crap, I'm 5'11", 160 pounds, and I still throw 81.
Yeah.
Like, how is this possible? And that, I was explaining this to a parent the other day. The tournaments, especially the ones that are like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you get home Sunday night at 2 o'clock in the morning. You have maybe an off day there, and then Tuesday you're practicing, and then Wednesday you're getting back on a plane. It's like, okay, for one, when do they sleep? Because the 8 a.m. game is a killer.
8 a.m. game and the 9:30 game at night.
the 9:30 p.m. game that ends at midnight. And then two, like, they're eating on the road, fast food, absolute shit all the time.
Yeah.
they're not putting the nutritional intake that they need in their body to grow.
Yeah.
And like that is something that you think isn't a big deal, and it's not in the short term, 1 weekend, 2 weekends, whatever. But if you do that for 4, 5, 6 consecutive years, like that's a huge amount of time, and that's growth that you can't get back. 'Cause
Yeah.
once you're a certain age, you stop growing. And that's something that parents, I think, need to also take into account is like travel ball, especially to that extent where you're going to be playing 9, 10 months out of the year, have no off season, are in hotels for a ton of the time of the year, not cooking home cooked meals, like not giving the nutrition that your kids need. Like, is that really worth for your kid long term? Probably not.
Yeah. Explaining to the listeners like the different, why always having to be having to always be game ready is not like also allowing you to be like developed.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like a killer. Is like, okay, we got done being game ready. We were playing games in November, and now we got to be game ready again in January,
6
February.
weeks.
But why can't like athletes just be like, okay, no, I'm still just going to develop up until that time?
Yeah. So for one, I remember when I was in high school, like in the fall, there were some times where I would like get asked to go play in whatever tournament, and I'd be like, no. And they would ask me why, and I'm like, one, like I haven't thrown a baseball in 4 or 5 weeks. Like my arms are already forward, and two, like I have not been doing anything to basically get me ready for game speed. Meaning, like I was just lifting. I was just basically like getting back in the swing of things, of actually moving quicker, or not even moving quicker at that point yet. So to answer your question of like getting, or like why can't we stay game ready all the time? Like your nervous system gets tired, and if you don't allow, especially like a growing adolescent teen, to basically go through off periods, your nervous system's never going to adapt to like the changing stimulus that you're putting on it. And as a result, you basically kind of like what you talked about, like go into this like flat line where you're kind of just doing the most you can to survive. And then you're going to hit a point where either volume's going to increase, you're just going to get tired and early, or you're going to get hit with something, i.e. an injury, and therefore then you're going to have that down period. And that down period is probably going to be the best thing for you, because then you're going to actually have a chance to rest and recover, assuming you do it correctly. So not giving like your kid, or if you're the athlete yourself, not giving your time, or not giving your body the time to basically like grow and develop, and like actually feel those changing adaptations that you're trying to put your body under, is something that is going to be detrimental for you long term. You may be able to get away with it short term, but you also have to realize too, and then we talked about this earlier, the skill component side of things, that takes time for you to actually learn. And how you do that is basically like taking a step back and actually like imbibing the information. Because if you're just constantly going, you're not actually giving your body a chance to actually learn. And therefore, the amount of information you learn is far fewer than what you could be doing.
Yeah. Like I'll use my own golf game as an example. I've taken plenty of lessons, and I always just like go out and play because that's just what I would have time for. And lo and behold, I just never got better.
Yeah.
Because I would just go out and play and like never actually like take the time out to practice the skill component of it.
Right.
And there's something you said about like on-course management and whatnot. And then for same thing, there's obviously a ton to be said about game reps, and still getting more reps is better than no reps. But if you're really trying to like make an improvement, which like that's going to level out at some point, the game reps are going to level out as far as like the improvement you're allowed to make. You gotta like take a step back and like allocate that time towards like really define like skilled practice. But again, it's its own chunk of time. Like you can't do it all together all at the same time, because again, you're just gonna crash out on that. But you remind me about kind of like your first point of like your nervous system just gets like taxed from doing too much. When Eric O'Flaherty, friend of the podcast, was on another podcast. I think it was Jerry DiFilippo's a long time ago. But
Challenger Strength.
Jerry, future friend of the podcast.
Jerry coming on.
But he was saying how like when he was in the bigs, and again, this is a guy who has every resource to him, had diet dialed in for the most part, was like a peak athlete and didn't have at the time no kids, no whatever, and could have nutrition all set for him. midway through the season, like he would just get his testosterone checked and like it would be plummeted. All-Star break would roll around, he'd go home and just like have beers, eat cheeseburgers. A couple weeks later, it was like back up to like where it needed to be. And again, that's like a professional athlete. And granted, like
different stresses,
different stresses for sure. But like, I think like that. And again, there's a lot of nuance within like using testosterone as a gauge of like overall health for sure. But like, there was an impact on a system, and as you had said earlier, the best thing was just to like take him out of that environment for just even a short period of time. For him, a short period of time. Yeah. But for kids, it's probably going to be significantly longer.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of plays a part in like the multi-sport conversation. I don't necessarily, believe like playing multiple sports just gets you better. Like the argument that I always use is there was a graphic on the NFL draft one year. This was like 5-6 years ago, I think. And it was 30 of the 32 first-round NFL draft picks ran track in high school.
Yeah, no shit.
And all the coaches on Twitter were like, see, like this is why you should play multiple sports. And somebody else was like, well, no shit. Like they were running track in high school because they were, good enough to become a first-round draft pick in the NFL. Like they're probably pretty fast or pretty strong.
Yeah.
Throwing the javelin, chop it, whatever.
Yeah. I played multiple sports in high school, and I was bad at all of them.
But to your point, there is evidence out there, and there is also good reason to play multiple sports for the thing that we're talking about right now, which is giving your kid a break from the, I don't want to say mundane because that makes it sound like sports are mundane, but you do the same movement over and over and over again. Like it's going to turn into mundane. Yeah. At least that's what your body's going to think of it.
Yes.
And giving them a change of scenery, one, like visually, but then two, being able for them to move. Like that is something that I think is very beneficial, not the least of which is it lets them explore different patterns that they're not getting in their other sport.
Yeah.
And then like, who knows, like if one person is really into baseball, but he likes playing basketball, that basketball almost gives him like a competitive reset in the sense of he can decharge and then recharge for a little bit before he gets back into baseball season. You mentioned earlier how kids basically, play and play and play and play, and then they never actually, choose a thing that they should be getting better at. That's usually called the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That is for a lot of high school kids going to be putting on muscle, putting on tissue, developing strength and size, and eating. Like, eating is probably in high school, I would say 70% of the battle. I mean, in terms of like how much better you can get just from doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like you need to eat, like a bodybuilder and like you're only eating chicken, rice, and broccoli. Yeah. For one, that sucks. And second of all, like it's not going to be something where like that's more of like a physique component. You need to provide your body energy. And like what I mean by that is you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning as a high school student probably because you have to get to school early, you have practice, whatever you have lift. You go to school for 7 or 8 hours. You have practice or lift after. You probably have, because every kid seems to have multiple activities after. You have something else later in the evening. Then you have to go do homework. You're burning a ton of energy and not putting a ton in. As a result, that leads you into what's called a calorie surplus and
caloric deficit.
Caloric deficit. Jeez, my gosh. Thank you. And then caloric surplus would be the opposite. Deficit then leads you into one, a high risk of injury, but then two, just a need for energy. Like you're constantly dragged down. You're constantly looking for something, and kids are coming in. They're like super tired. They're also probably not sleeping well, which sounds counterintuitive. But if you don't eat a lot, you actually don't have the physical energy to let your body shut down at night. So that's another thing too. Like having kids being able to like shut down from their current sport and then completely either like change course and play like a different sport for a short period of time, or really focus on like the diet component, the strength component, getting in the weight room. That stuff in high school especially is going to carry you really farther forward than like getting better at the physical skill. Yeah, there's some exceptions here and there. But when you get to college, like if you want to play sports in college, like the guys who are going to be really physically mature and like more advanced than their peers are like going to be the ones that are set up for a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably a lot of people saw the stat from the College World Series of just the average size of the athlete. It was like, 6'1", 6'2", which again that is less in control.
Yeah.
But the average body weight for every team was above 200 pounds. Yeah. I can't tell like how many athletes I get where it's like we have the weight gain conversation. Obviously, like it, you approach it differently for each athlete. But a common like feedback I get from them is like, well, I don't want to get slow. It's like, one, that won't happen. Right. Two, unless you're gaining like 30 pounds in like 2 months, you're like, it's not going to happen. But two, like, even like if theoretically you did get like mildly slower, like the benefits that you would gain just from being bigger and heavier, just from being more powerful, in a sport like baseball, we're not playing soccer, we're not playing high jump. Like the benefits you gain from that are still going to typically outweigh like what may be lost from like a speed component. But even then, the lost speed is still going to be like extremely unlikely to happen because you're going to be getting stronger. That's going to lead to like better, like it's going to lead to better like just general like muscular outputs, which generally should help your speed overall. So it's a long ways to go from like from like getting to the point of like being like losing speed because you are gained weight, especially when you're 150, 160, 170. Right. If you're looking at like again the average College World Series athlete, there's plenty of center fielders on those teams that are like 200 plus pounds, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah. When University of Florida had Wyatt Langford and Jack Caglione on their team, I think every single guy in that starting lineup was over 200 pounds. And you look at the average size of the big leaguer too, like that's like 215 pounds.
Yeah.
It's not a small man. And even, the quote unquote smaller positions of second, shortstop, center, whatever. Mike Trout's 230 pounds. Bryce Harper's 230 pounds. Aaron Judge is 270 or 280, whatever. Like
Shohei, 55 stolen bases of 220 pounds.
200, at least. All those guys. I mean, I can't. Just about the only guy I can think of is Luis Arias. Is about the only guy 200 pounds. And
Corbin Carroll probably sucked.
And actually Mookie Betts is there too. Like, but those guys are also what we call the exception, not the rule. Like, if you want a moderate game after those guys, like, good luck.
They're the smokers that live to be 105.
Right. So I think from that point, look at what the big leaguers are doing in the sense of these guys are all big, they're all strong. At least most of them are. Don't look at the one exception and be like, oh, like that's the reason why I'm going to have my kid do that, because it's just negligence in my mind. Weight gain is simple, not easy, meaning it's entirely up to you, or most of the time it's entirely up to you. It's not necessarily something that's going to be easy though. Like if you ever tried to eat a ton of food and to gain weight, it's not fun by any means, but the principle itself is simple in the sense of if I consume this, assuming my metabolic system is operating functionally, and I continue to lift and do it consistently, my body weight should increase and my lean tissue mass should increase as well.
Point I tell my athletes like a lot, especially like my underclassmen in high school. It's like if you can just consistently gain 2 pounds a month over the course of,
goes a long way.
That goes so long. That will go so long. Like if you're looking at a kid who's coming in as a freshman in high school, he's like 140, and like you just even just 1 year of like 2 pounds a month. And again, that's not always going to be feasible, but like if you can average that out, you're already probably becoming then like a average size sophomore. You do that for another 2 years, and like you're pushing 200 pounds by the time you're senior year. And like that, like when you rather than think like, oh, I gotta gain 30 pounds, but when you like break it up into chunks, just like you do with any goal setting, it's like it becomes much more achievable. It's like, it's still not easy. You still have a lot of focus on it, but like it becomes a little bit less daunting than being like, oh man, I gotta gain 30 pounds. How am I ever gonna do that? I eat a ton. It's like, no, just do some version of mild tracking your weight, and every couple of weeks, if the scale's going up, you're good. If every couple of weeks the scale's staying the same, eat more.
Gotta change.
If scale's going down, gotta eat a lot more.
Someone's got to really change. Yeah, it's like the old wrestling coach. It's like you got to lose 20 pounds in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, no. Oh man.
You can't be doing that. Which
Thankfully we're not a wrestling podcast.
By the way, I cannot believe why that's like a socially acceptable practice. Like, I cannot believe that wrestling coaches like don't get demonized more for that, because that is so unhealthy for the kid.
Yeah.
To flex your weight that much and to do it in a way that's so unhealthy.
I try being I'm putting it on me now, but try and be a PT who treats baseball and wrestlers like to get like kids who like who are mid baseball season but also like prepping for wrestling. It's just like, what?
Yeah, it's like counterproductive.
It is. Yeah.
I had a buddy who was like a big wrestler, and he would tell me that like in order to lose weight, he would go to basketball games he would tell his mom in the car to crank the heat up to the highest it would possibly go, and he would put 4 coats on and just be sweating his ass off for the whole car ride, which would be like an hour or whatever. And then he'd get out of the car, make himself throw up, and then go play basketball. And it was like, in what world is that healthy? Like, this can't happen.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be something that we talk about next time.
Yeah, that's the next conversation podcast.
But that'll wrap up today's. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll try and release more of this stuff in terms of like just little tidbits of knowledge here and there, and then general concepts as well. Maybe one time we're going to like something super specific, lateral sling maybe. But this is the Beyond the Batters Box podcast. I'm your host, Nick Kemper.
Terry Phillips.
Thank you. We will see you next week.